About sexual orientation is that we know that it's protected in the Constitution. So that's something that people have not dwelled on, and I'm not really sure how people define sexual orientation, but when it says that nobody can be discriminated against on the grounds of their sexual orientation, that involves everything. From the way you live, from the way you dress, from the way you conduct your personal lives, your partnerships, and so on. And I also know that there is a limitation on that. It says if there is a law that limits it. And of course, people have said that the Marriage Act prohibits gay marriage, and gay marriage is allowed in lots of other countries. Of course, it's a social issue as well, so that you have to look at the way in which the community thinks and sees it. But at the same time, I think there is room for that to be tested in the courts. And if you look at the Marriage Act, it says marriage is a union between a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others. And that can be very loosely defined as saying, well, perhaps, people are allowed to get married no matter what sex or gender they are, but you can only really marry one other person, rather than have polygamy, which, we used to have in Fiji in the past. So there's all sorts of ways of defining it. And the only way to do this is to put a test case to the courts and see how the courts will define it. So yes, sexual orientation is protected in the Constitution. The Marriage Act is supposedly limiting that, but it actually, if you read the Marriage Act carefully, it doesn't necessarily, and that the only way to find out how much it limits sexual orientation, whether it goes all the way to gay marriage or not, is to put a test case, put your voices through to the community or to the political parties and so on. And political parties are going to have to take a stand. Whether they would allow something like gay marriage or whether they would not allow that. So it's just a matter of what the community thinks and how the courts interpret. They themselves, if it comes. So after all, political parties speak to a constituency. And people of a certain sexual orientation, and it doesn't have to be homosexuality, it could be heterosexuality as well. Sexual orientation is broader than just one sex. So it's up to the constituency to say to the political parties, look, what is your stand? To ask a question, what is your stand on sexual orientation? How far do you think it goes? Can you define it? And it's up to the political parties to answer that question. But what I'm saying is it's a legal issue too. So it's for the courts to decide ultimately whether the Marriage Act limits sexual orientation provision in the Constitution.